Hello and welcome to our indie author panel. Our session is called Creating Chemistry, and the ladies who are going to create that chemistry for you are the wonderful Clare Lydon, the gorgeous Clare Ashton, I need a clap, Rizzo. Now,
can I just say, before you go any further, did everyone see their Artist of the Week video?
Yes.
If you didn't, you must watch it. Go onto the website and watch their Artist of the Week video. It was hilarious and so much effort was put into it. It was worth watching.
We are all lesbian fiction authors, and the sort of genre most of our books is lesbian chick lit. You have to be careful how you say lesbian chick lit. Try saying it. Should we turn these off? They're off. They're off. Try saying it after you've had a drink, or if you see me in the bar later and you ask what I do, I'll probably just tell you I'm a lesbian who licks clit. So, anyway, we're going to start off today. I want to introduce Cindy Rizzo. And Cindy has flown in, especially for Elfest, from New York City, where she lives with her wife, Jennifer. Cindy released her debut novel at the back end of last year. It's called Exception to the Rule, and it did incredibly well everywhere. And last week, Cindy picked up a Goldie, which is a lesbian fiction award, the best lesbian fiction awards around, for the best debut lesbian fiction novel of the year in the world. So Cindy, start by raising the temperature somewhat. So Cindy, over to you.
Thank you, Kiki. So I decided to read from my second book. The first book is on the table with those of the other authors here. So if you're so inclined to buy books, you can get them right there. But I also have a sign-up sheet for notification about my second book, which is just about with the editor right now and going to be released in a couple of months. I'm going to read, it's a little chilly in here, so as Kiki said, I thought I'd raise the temperature. I'm going to start with a sex scene from my second book called Love is Enough. And what you need to know in order to key right into the reading is this is a love story between two women, Angie Antonelli, who is, this takes place in 2010. She's a congresswoman in the United States, and she's facing re-election for her second term. And she's just met Jan Clifford, who's an investment manager, comes from a very sort of wealthy, old money family in New England. And it was sort of love at first sight. They met on a sailboat when a mutual friend set them up so that Jan could give Angie a sailing lesson. And this is their second date, and Angie had told Jan on the first date that she never has sex on the first date. So this is the second date. As they closed the apartment door behind them, Jan pulled Angie to her and kissed her softly first and then harder as their mouths opened and their tongues began to touch and search soft, warm places. Jan moved to Angie's neck and whispered hoarsely, "Tell me there are no rules about the second date, please." "No rules," Angie breathed out as she burrowed her hands in Jan's hair. "Angie," Jan continued, trying to find the right words to explain what she wanted, what she needed. I'd like to be the one who holds the tiller, you know?" She moved her hands down Angie's back and rested them in the curve above her ass and hoped that Angie hadn't forgotten the parts of a sailboat. Angie pulled back a little and looked into Jan's eyes with that cute little pursed lip smile and tilted head. "Works for me, Skipper," she said softly, and then into Jan's ear whispered, "First mate reporting for duty. Do I get a turn on the tiller at some point?" Jan nodded and breathed out, "Yeah," as she reached under Angie's pullover satin shell and felt the smooth skin of her stomach and then her back. Angie held her tight and began walking the two of them through the living room into the small foyer. At some point, Jan heard Angie's voice say, "Bedroom," and then their clothes came off in such a heated rush that it felt like only a second later she was drinking in the sight of the most beautiful body she had ever seen. While Jan wanted to touch, to take, to bring Angie to boundless heights, she was momentarily stopped by the need to look. What is this sense of awe she evokes in me? It's like I keep finding myself again and again back on the boat in those first seconds I saw her. Angie lay back with her body turned. Jan caressed her neck, her cheek, gazed at two beautiful breasts, oval-shaped with deep pink nipples and a soft belly that ended in a patch of dark hair and firm thighs and calves. Pint-sized, compact perfection. As Angie's husky voice whispered, "Please," Jan moved on top, one thigh positioned between her legs. She heard a sharp intake of breath and began to nibble below Angie's ears. "Please what?" she teased as she began to touch the already hard nipples she'd just been admiring. Her name came out in one long syllable. "Jan, I'm so, oh please." She heard Angie struggling to speak and knew instantly that there was no need to tease or to wait. The build-up over this weekend, or maybe even from the first moment they'd met, had led them right here to this place of intense and intimate connection, to the need to join and make clear and tangible all that had been implicit in their looking and gentle touching, even in their long conversations. Guided by an insistent instinct, Jan moved her hand down Angie's stomach and over the soft, now wet dark hair and lower, sliding inside to where she knew they both wanted her to be. Angie guided her with soft moans of "oh yes" as Jan moved her fingers in and out repeatedly. This is everything, she thought. This is my life, us, together. She needed to tell Angie. "Baby," she whispered into Angie's neck. "This is us. This is who we are. This close, this closeness." Angie's breath was ragged, but she answered by squeezing Jan's upper arms, holding on, and then finally the words, "Yes, us," as she arched her back and moved with Jan. It was another moment of awe as Jan watched Angie's ascent and then her climax, her sharp cries of pleasure and release, her cheeks beautifully flushed. Jan felt her throat constrict with emotion and her eyes start to water. "This is my life. You. Only you." Jan held Angie close, arms and legs locked onto her in tight embrace. She felt tears on her cheek and on her chest, not knowing which of them, or maybe it was both. There were no words for a while until she noticed a slight loosening of Angie's grip on her and a mutual pulling slightly apart so they could look at one another. Angie reached up for Jan's face, caressing her cheek. "Jan Clifford, you have done the impossible. You have left a politician speechless." She smiled and put a finger on Jan's lips and into her mouth. Jan welcomed it softly with her tongue and then moved her head so it slipped out. She lay back and pulled Angie on top of her, moving her hands down from soft shoulders to a smooth back and onto a rounded bottom that fit nicely into the palms of her hands. She looked up at Angie, her cheeks still flushed light pink. "It's time to see how much the first mate remembers from her lesson." "Hand on the tiller?" Angie asked sweetly. Jan nodded. Angie smiled. "I think I remember." She kissed Jan's forehead and then her lips. "Bow." She slid down and took a nipple into her mouth, causing Jan's breathing to quicken. "Port," she said with a sly smile, and moved her mouth to the other breast. "Starboard." Jan watched Angie slide down, kissing her stomach as she moved lower. "Heading aft, skipper," she whispered. Jan raised herself onto her forearms and smiled. "Ah, stern," said Angie triumphantly. And then Jan was no longer able to hold herself up. Her body became liquid at the first touch of Angie's mouth on her and the steady movement of her tongue. There was no time. There was no sound, not even her own cries. She was submerged into the vibrations and the explosion, her body carried on the wave and then under it into this place of floating until soft arms surrounded her and she felt the warm reassurance of Angie's breath on her cheek. "Skipper's gone overboard," she murmured. "You'll need to guide us back to shore."
That's how they do it in America. Cindy, a quick question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Your book, Exceptional Plural, did fantastically well in the UK. Do you ever find, being an American author, when you're writing, that you are conscious of the language difference between American English and English English?
English. I'm very conscious of it when I read Kiki Kiki Archer books. And so I had to learn a lot of new words when I read your books. But I guess, I mean, when I sent you this piece and I said something about the shell underneath Angie's jacket, you were like, what shell? What are you talking about? And what that is it's a sleeveless blouse that you would wear under a jacket.
And I think over here we all thought her heroine was wearing a shell suit.
Yeah, I know. So I guess that was totally unconscious. I had no idea that you didn't know what that meant.
And Claire, do you ever find people, Americans, pick up points in your books that they question you about?
I think that the US and UK languages the cultures are pretty much amalgamated now, aren't they? So I think we watch so much American telly and read so much American stuff online that I think people don't really have an issue. I mean, I know that you have to write in the culture and the language you're in. If I wrote that my heroine went out in pants and a vest, it would be odd, wouldn't it? So I wouldn't do that.
Okay.
I find readers quite like the differences actually of British characters being terribly chuffed about things.
Yeah, I think the Brits are doing quite well in America, are they, Cindy? Yeah, we're doing quite well. Cindy, you did raise the temperature. Thank you very much for being such a good sport. We're going to move on now to our very own English Rose, Clare Ashton. Some of you will all recognise Clare from last year. Clare's first novel, Penance, was longlisted for the Polari First Book Prize. Her second novel, After Mrs Hamilton, also won a Goldie Award, and her third novel that's out now, called That Certain Something, is doing incredibly well. It's #1 all over the place. So can we welcome, please, Clare Ashton.
Yeah, this reading is from That Certain Something that is just out there. It's rom-com. My first two books are a bit darker. It features a young heroine called Pia, who's in her early 20s. She's a bit of a naive character, but has a big heart. She falls for a slightly older woman, a bit wiser, more worldly, and definitely a bit more posh. And they're on an enchanting evening in London. And at the moment they're on the tube. Even with the slight distortion of the curved window, Kate's beautiful. Her high cheekbones and eyes more defined in the dim light. Pia didn't know how long she'd been staring when she noticed Kate's eyes locked on hers. Pia twitched away at first, then slowly returned her gaze. Kate started to turn, her nose elongating in the warped reflection. Pia giggled. Kate stuck out her tongue, so that it seemed to stretch almost to Pia's ear. An elderly lady further down the carriage glanced up from her e-reader. She didn't look disapproving, but Pia stifled her laughter until the woman returned to her read. Pia tilted up her head and noticed another version of herself upside down in the window above her reflection. She tilted up her chin so that her two heads were now joined in a ludicrous hourglass shape. She heard Kate trying to suppress a snigger. The woman along the carriage put down her e-reader and smiled at them. "I have to ask," she said in an accent that would have been out of place in the 1950s BBC. "How long have you two been together?" Pia's reflection opened two mouths in surprise. "We're not together," Kate said, her tone generous and amused. "Really?" The woman caught Pia's eye. "Oh God, no," Pia said, embarrassed for Kate that someone would assume that they were a couple. In fact, I've no idea who she is." Kate laughed. "We met a few hours ago." The woman's deep wrinkles stretched as she raised questioning eyebrows. "Well," she sat back in her seat, "whatever you two have, they should bottle it." She turned back to her book. Kate and Pia giggled as they stepped onto the platform. They walked arm in arm towards the escalators. "Do you reckon she..." Pia gestured back towards the tube. "What?" "You know," Pia nodded her head back. "Do you think she was a what?" "Oh, you know." Kate leant in. "Are you trying to say lesbian?" "Oh, I do know how to say it. I perhaps thought... Well, I thought she might be. I can't imagine that many older ladies would assume we're a couple. So I thought, maybe..." Kate stopped, her expression incredulous. "Pia, of course she was." "Oh. Good old girl with a pair of slacks like that. She has to have a companion somewhere in Stoke Newington." "Wow. I can honestly say that passed me by." He turned and ambled on. "What do you think she was reading?" Kate's tone was mischievous. Pia rolled her eyes. "Oh, something like The Well of Loneliness." No, I think she had a bit more spark to her than that. I think she was more of a lesbian erotica person. Pierre's jaw dropped. You are much naughtier than you first thought. He started to think. What do you reckon? 101 ways with lube on the tube. No, I think that lady was far beyond instruction manuals. I'd go for erotic stories. Lizzie pays lip service, Pierre suggested enthusiastically. Kate began to giggle. A pussy's wet tail, Pierre hissed again. Actually, dear, you're not far wrong. The perfect newsreader pronunciation stopped Pierre and Kate in their tracks. They swung round to see the elderly woman striding behind them. Spank my mistress, died domination 3. I would recommend them wholeheartedly. She smiled, marched past, and the e-reader tucked under her arm.
Characters in Clare's book, Kate and Pierre, you've had a lot of requests for a sequel because the chemistry between her two main characters is incredible. Clare, how important is it for you when you're writing to create that chemistry when the characters meet for the first time? How do you get that spark when you're writing?
I'm a big sucker for love at first sight stories, I'm afraid. I don't care how unrealistic people think they are, I like them. I tend to like pairs of heroines who've got something a bit different to each other, so there may be in different social spheres, there's maybe an age gap or a different social status, so they meet perhaps unusually or by accident, and so there's an intrigue that they have for each other, and I think the reader has for them because they wouldn't normally socialise together, and I think that's intriguing. I find that works very well for my interest at least.
So after Mrs. Hamilton, there's a big age gap.
Yeah,
so there's a big age gap there, a big social gap with this one. What about Penance?
Blows my theory out of the water. Very different personalities, I suppose, different as family situations. One woman had a child and the other was very, very much single, I suppose. And they were just in an isolated position and wouldn't have ordinarily met, actually. So again,
so your readers are wanting them to get together.
Yeah, I think it creates some interest and intrigue if you have those differences.
Is there anything you tend to do, Clare or Cindy, when your characters, you know they're the two main characters in your book, they're going to meet for the first time? How do you, the session's called Creating Chemistry, so how do you do that in your books?
I think I did it differently in each of the books. In the first book, they didn't like each other at first, and they were so different in terms of their backgrounds and how they approached being lesbians. And they really came together over time, seeing what their really sort of deep common interests and common connections were. So that was that book. And in this book, it's immediate. It's an immediate chemistry. And then, well, problems start. So that's kind of more typical of lesbians, I think.
I think a lot of lesbian books actually, like Claire's pointed out, it is love at first sight. Who actually believes in love at first sight here? Has it happened? Yeah, so maybe, some people do. Clare, do you do anything different, Clare?
I think in my book, London Calling, I had the two main characters meet and then one of them buggered off for 6 weeks on holiday, so that was a
Distance.
bit... Yeah. And then the other one had to bumble through and make some mistakes. And even when they get together, I guess that's quite a slow burn. But they knew there was a connection there, but it took a while for it to eventually grow.
Okay, we're going to move on to Clare Lydon. Now, Clare Lydon is a new lesbian fiction author who has quite literally exploded onto the scene. Her book, called London Calling, came out in March. Clare is from London, and pretty much immediately it got the Amazon UK Lesfic #1. It got the Amazon #1 in Australia, in Canada, I don't know where else, but it's done really, really well, and that's since March. So can we welcome, please, Clare Lydon.
Hello, lovely to be here. As Kiki said, I'll be reading from my debut novel, London Calling, just in case anybody doesn't know what it's like again. London Calling is set in London, as the title may give away. It's a story of Jess, who has just come back from Australia, where she's had her heart broken, being cheated on, decided to jack in Sydney and come back to London and try and build a new life for herself. But she has to come back and live with her parents, so that brings all its own problems. And then she has to then set about finding a new job, finding somewhere to live, and finding new love, of course, which, as I said, doesn't always go so smoothly. She meets a woman called Lucy, who then dogs her to Australia for 6 weeks, and this is their second meeting. It's on a canal side in London. Saturday afternoon on the canal side was busy and blisteringly hot. I took another sip of my cider as I sat on the ground, feeling a trickle of sweat running down my back. I was pondering what shops to hit later, when a shadow loomed over me. I squinted up into the sun and turned to see a woman on a bike peering down. Jess? Yeah. She had a helmet on, so I had no idea who it was. Lucy, friend of Kate's, we met in town a few weeks back before I went on holiday. I steadied my weight on one leg and straightened up to match Lucy's height, brushing the front and back of my jeans. Hi, I said. I tried to control my voice. You made it back from Sydney then? Yep, there and back alive. She gave me a shy smile. Good to see you again. You too, I said. Nice bike. Thanks, been on it an hour. I could do the drink, actually. Her bike looked like it meant business, being silver and shiny, my 2 criteria for judging such things. Also, if the tone cut of her calf muscles was anything to go by, she was no stranger to it either. Well, join me, I said. Sure, she asked. Positive, I can guard your bike while you get a drink. That'd be great. She laid her bike delicately on the floor beside me. Do you need one, she said, unbuckling her helmet strap underneath her chin. I smiled and cleared my throat. No, I'm good, thanks. Back in a tick. I couldn't help a huge grin spreading across my face as I watched this attractive woman disappear into the pub. This Saturday was definitely full of possibilities. When she returned just minutes later, she either flashed the bartender a killer smile or was one of those people who trampled old ladies to get a drink. I noticed again what I'd noticed the first time round. Gorgeous dark brown eyes and adorable smile. She sat down beside me with a pint of lager and we clinked glasses. Gorgeous weather, isn't it? Excuse the helmet hair, she said, running a hand through it. Probably looks a right state. It's fine, I said. Dressed casually, in t-shirt, cut-off jeans and trainers, Lucy looked edible. So, tell me about your trip to Sydney. Did you meet any cute women? Why in the world did I ask that? Lucy snorted. Yeah, I was beating them off with a stick. Or is it a boomerang in Oz? I paused, regaining my composure. I'm not sure either would work, I said. Okay, let me try again. Did you make it to Bondi? She nodded enthusiastically. It was ace. I even took some surf lessons. Now that is amazing, I said. I was there 3 years and never got beyond putting on a wetsuit. Fear of sharks. Well, I can't say I was a pro, Lucy said, but it was fun. Plus, the instructor was cute too. Ah, now we're getting to the bottom of it, I said. And she laughed. Even at one of my bad jokes. Interesting. What about Newtown, I said. Ah, well, that's a whole other story. Oh, and I saw that drag king ex of yours. What was her name? Terry, I said. I was stunned. Yes, Butch Cassidy. Oh my God, now I'm really embarrassed. No need, she said. I was really impressed with her. She raised an eyebrow. And she's still doing that act with the black dildo, by the way. I blushed, foam box red. And it's just like you said, very realistic, shall we say. Lucy began to laugh as I gulped down my pint for something to do. I'm not sure I could have made you feel any more uncomfortable, she said. I smiled and flicked my hands. Oh, it's fine, it's just, blast from the past, brought up by somebody here and now. But I'm glad you enjoyed the show, whatever else Terry is, she's definitely a pro. Agreed, Lucy said. She closed her eyes and stretched backward, arching her body into the sun, straining every muscle to let the sunshine in. I caught myself staring, but turned away just as she opened her eyes, and I was looking back into the water. Smooth, I thought. So, do you come here often, she asked. Good line, I said. I got more, she replied.
Those characters are very cool and smooth in her book. So Claire, do you find... Well, that was going to be the question. Your heroines, what traits do you look for in your heroines, and are they similar to your traits?
Of course.
Yeah.
I guess the key thing with heroines and any lead characters and any character is that they have to be realistic, I think. So that means that my lead characters aren't alpha females, I suppose. They're not always strong, they're not always sexy, they haven't got amazing careers. But I guess the key thing for me is making them relatable. So I like my characters to have flaws, be vulnerable. Everybody's got to have a kryptonite, and I guess with Jess, her kryptonite is indecision, because she's got her heart in the right place, but she just bumbles along, and she finds herself in compromising situations all the time. So she's quite frustrating in a way, but I like that better.
People do, I think, criticise lesbian fiction sometimes because all of the characters are gorgeous and rich and perfect.
I quite like that.
It's nice to step out of reality, isn't it, actually? What about you, Claire? Are your characters, do you find that you are drawn to writing traits that are similar to the traits you have? Or do you write something completely opposite?
Mix, actually. I've got to sprinkle my bad habits around all the characters, I think, good ones and bad ones. The heroines tend to be inspired by people I know, the personalities. And then I'm afraid I can get a nice gorgeous film starter. But there's personalities on them books to inspire me.
What about you, Cindy?
I think there's aspects of me in each of them. And some of them do things that I wish I could do, but I would never do. So it's a kind of fun exercise to have my character Robin say things that I can't even imagine I would ever say.
But I think as readers, I read Cindy's book, I think it was a year ago that Cindy sent me her first book. And when you read a book, I immediately thought, Robin, Cindy's Robin. You immediately, I think probably a lot of readers do, you look at the author, you think, right, which character does the author think they are? But definitely I thought you were Robin in your book.
Robin's a much better writer than I am.
And does Robin feature in the sequel?
Yes, if I get a chance to read again, there's a little bit of her in the second reading.
Yeah, definitely. Unfortunately, Jade Winters couldn't be here today due to personal reasons, so I'm going to have to step in and read a small portion from my latest book, When You Know. The reading is taken from When You Know. Sorry, not very prepared. New lovers Jenna James and Susan Quinn are living apart. Jenna in the French Alps and Susan in England. And this is the first time they ever FaceTime on their phones. So I'm going to need a volunteer, please. Hands up. Anybody? Okay, up you come. What's your name? What's your name? Nikki, nice to meet you today. I'd like Nikki, you to read Susan, and I'm going to read Jenna and narrator. It's a sex scene, Nikki, is that okay? Nikki is actually my wife of 8 years, so wifey, sex scene, is that okay? Okay. No headaches? Or periods? Okay, ready? We haven't really been practicing this all week. Susan jumped at the sound of her phone. She blinked quickly and looked at the screen. Jenna's photo was smiling out at her, and the text was telling her that Jenna James would like to FaceTime. Susan clicked on the green accept button and brought the phone up to her ear. Hello? Susan, hi, can you see me? Susan instinctively glanced around the room. No. It's FaceTime, Susan. You should be able to see me. You've not got the phone to your ear, have you? Susan sheepishly adjusted her position.
Jenna, wow, hi, how are you? This is weird, I feel embarrassed.
Stop it, Susan. You must have done FaceTime before. Susan shook her head, trying not to focus on the small, moving image of herself in the bottom right-hand corner of the phone.
Am I big on your screen?
Yes, and I can see you checking yourself out. Try and look into the camera if you can. Susan lifted her eyes and looked at Jenna.
So, what do we do?
We make love.
Is it safe?
What?
FaceTime, is it safe? Could people be watching us?
No, of course not. Who would want to anyway?
I miss you.
So feel me.
How?
Slowly undo the top button of your shirt. Woo! Susan slowly undid the top button of her shirt. Babe, it says it in the book. Susan slowly undid the top button of her shirt. Susan gulped.
How much do you want to see?
Do you have any idea how sexy you are, Madam Quinn? Susan undid another
You make me feel sexy.
You are, look at you. Take it off completely. Susan did as instructed. Wow, okay. Here goes. I'll take my eyes off you. Close your eyes.
They're closed.
And just listen.
I'm listening.
Susan, you have to take this seriously.
I am.
Okay then, imagine this. We're living together.
Since when?
Just go with it.
Okay, we're living together.
You've spent the day teasing me on the text and being cheeky, just like you're being cheeky now.
Okay.
Shh.
Sorry.
So, I send you a message telling you to be prepared for when I get home. I tell you I'm going to take you the minute I walk through the door.
Ooh.
Close your eyes.
Why?
Because I've just walked into the room and I've taken off my silk scarf. I've tied it tightly around your eyes.
Ooh, nice one with the butterflies.
Susan, please.
Sorry.
So, imagine I'm wearing that pale blue denim shirt you love.
Oh, with those black gap jeans.
Susan, whatever, it doesn't matter. Anyway, you're waiting naked on the bed, exactly like you are now.
But I've still got my trousers on.
Well, take them off. I need you naked. Susan hastily unbuttoned her trousers. Kick them off at the ankle. Woo! So I'm naked and waiting.
Now what?
I think we'll leave it there, shall we? Thank you. Sex scenes, ladies. Do you? I love writing sex scenes, and I try and make them all slightly different. So that was an online face one. It does get a bit raunchy, but I said we are stopping it there.
Thank goodness.
Do you like writing sex scenes? I'm going to send it to Cindy first, because yours was quite a hot scene at the start. And do you prepare in any sort of way? Is there anything you do when you think, okay, I'm going to write a sex scene tonight? Do you do anything in particular?
No. No, what I really try to focus on is not make it seem like all the other sex scenes I've written or read, and that's very difficult. But that's why I thought I was so relieved that I thought, oh, okay, they're going to play around with the whole boat thing, and I don't think anyone else has done that. But it's hard to not do it, you know, one same thing after another after another. You want to make it different. That's a big challenge in writing sex and lesbian fiction.
Claire and Claire, sex with you two.
And that would be confusing.
Lives of
Oh, Claire, she said.
I used to, when I first started writing, I thought I was a bit embarrassed about them going out as well. Now I have no shame at all in it. I like writing them. Although having them finely edited or closely edited, that's quite excruciating. So I had just, in Mrs. Hamilton, they really got ripped to shreds on my editor. I had characters mauling each other to, perhaps a crest might be better. Yeah, it's just excruciating. It's being like being marked on your technique in bed.
No, it is. And Claire Lydon's book, I don't know how many of you have read London Calling, but you should, 'cause it's wonderful. There were actually lots of sex scenes.
I took quite a few out.
Well, first time I was reading it, I thought, this is good. It was, there's quite a few in there. They're all slightly different.
Yeah. And that's interesting when your family read them.
Yeah.
My brother actually read it and said to me, we'll never talk about this. I said, yes, that's good, that's good.
My family get edited versions.
Oh, really?
They would not have the full thing.
I actually had quite a lot of straight women tell me that I filled them in on a lot of, you know, issues that they had, you know, the questions they had, so they all liked it. I think that when I'm writing a sex scene, it's no different to any other scene. But when I'm editing a sex scene, I look at it from a reader perspective rather than a character perspective. So it has to serve its purpose, shall we say. And if it doesn't, it needs to be rewritten.
Okay, wonderful. We are going to have another reading from the wonderful Cindy. Is it again from your second book, Cindy?
It is. It is.
Okay. Let me come again, please, Cindy Rizzo.
This is also from Love Is Enough, and it's later in the book. So you have this sort of coming together, this very intense chemistry and feeling, and then they start integrating into each other's worlds, and some of the doubts start coming up, and issues come up for them. And this scene, Jan has taken Angie to an alumni event at Princeton University, which is her alma mater and the alma mater of generations of her family. And the other thing you need to know about this is that Angie's best friends are Robin and Tracy, and they're a couple. Angie excused herself and made her way to the ladies' room. She had just entered a stall when she heard the main door open and a group of women enter, laughing. "So what about Jan Clifford, huh?" a silky voice asked. "The years have been kind to old Cliff, haven't they? Still the hottest thing in the room." "Yes, indeed," a higher-pitched voice responded. "Brings back some good memories from my reckless and carefree youth." Angie could not believe it. They were actually talking about Jan. "No," the first voice again. "You and Cliff? What would your husband say if he knew?" More laughter. Angie opened her mouth and put her hand over it, trying not to call attention to herself. "Wait, who are you girls talking about?" It was the third woman, speaking in a nasal-toned, flat-voweled accent. "Oh, right," first woman responded. "You were already gone by the time we all got to Princeton. Jan Clifford was the biggest catch on campus, if you were of a certain persuasion. Except no one could catch her for very long. And now I'm finding out that she even charmed some of the allegedly straight girls." Her tone was pointed, an obvious reference to her high-pitched voice friend. "Are you talking about the one who's dating the politician? What's her name?" Nasal voice asked. "Oh, great," thought Angie sarcastically. "She doesn't even know my name." She shook her head, realizing that even in the most embarrassing situations, she had a politician's reflex of disappointment that someone didn't know who she was. "Yes, that's exactly who I mean. Pamela, you know Diana Holbrook, don't you?" That was high-pitched voice, the one with the husband. "Oh, yes, I do," said silky voice. "We were at Miss Porter's together. You know, she and Cliff were involved for a few years. We thought someone had finally caught the slippery one." "Until she gave poor Cliff the old heave-ho," said the straight woman. Angie was confused by this. Jan had told her that she'd broken things off with Diana. "Is that the story Diana's peddling around? Because I heard she was the one who got dumped," said the silky-voiced Pamela. "Wait, I know Diana Holbrook," nasal voice said triumphantly. "Her family has that nice summer place in Newport, right?" "Yes, that's her," Pamela again. Apparently Cliff and Diana had quite a time together in that house. She cleared her throat. "In every room of that house, if you know what I mean." Angie clutched her stomach, afraid she was going to be sick at the pictures that had been thrust into her mind by the horribly annoying Pamela. She heard three grating voices giggling like teenagers. Desperate to leave, she knew that there was no way out that wouldn't just make a bad situation worse. "Well, who could blame them?" woman with the husband said. "I mean, what a gorgeous couple they made. If two women could make a baby together, they would have had stunning children." Angie's stomach lurched, and she really worried she was going to lose it. She grabbed her phone from her bag, put it in quiet mode, and texted Robin. "Text me back a picture of Diana Holbrook right now. Can't explain." She needed to know. A few seconds later, the phone vibrated in her hand. "Yes, ma'am. Ours is not to question why. Ours is just to do or die." There was talk of makeup and summer travel now. As she waited for Robin, Angie was relieved that the topic had moved on from Jan, and especially from Jan and Diana. She sat quietly, her phone in the palm of her hand, her ears still on alert. "So, do you think Cliff is serious about this Congresswoman?" asked the one with the husband. "I'd be surprised," said the awful Pamela. "She's not exactly Cliff's type. I can't recall her going for ethnic, if you know what I mean. Plus, if Diana couldn't hold her, then I'm not sure someone who isn't as good-looking has a chance. This whole politics thing gets old after a while. Angie wanted to cry. She felt small and ugly, completely unworthy and out of her element. She felt like the biggest nobody on the planet. Come on, girls, I'm sure Gordon will think I fell in if we don't go back out there. And with that last remark by the woman with the husband, Angie heard the door open and close. They were gone. She breathed out in relief just as her phone buzzed in her hand. Robin had texted a caption with the photo. Presenting the ex. Tracy says, meh. Angie swiped the photo with her finger to enlarge it and sat staring at one of the most beautiful women she had ever seen. Tracy, probably the only person better looking than Diana Holbrook, was indeed her best friend to have said meh about this woman. The terrible threesome in the bathroom had been right. This woman and Jan had made a strikingly gorgeous couple. Angie finished in the bathroom, doing her best to keep it together, but needing more than anything to put some distance between her and Princeton. The truth hit her hard. She could go to Harvard Law School, get elected to Congress, and even meet the president. She could get her picture in every paper and on every celebrity website. But in the end, she would always be an Italian girl from Medford, Massachusetts, a world completely separate and apart from this one.
When is this book going to be out? Because that sounds really good.
Well, I'm hoping before, I'm going to Women's Week in Provincetown where they have more reading, so I'm hoping before then, which is early October, so maybe sometime late summer, early fall.
Okay, wonderful. We're going to have another reading from Clare Ashton now, and this is from That Certain Something again?
I'll try. A yell, silent yell of wife to take that this time. It's a scene a bit later in the book. It features Pia, the young heroine, and my favourite character in the book, Ed, who is a woman in her 50s. She's Pia's boss. Louder. Do you want the mic? I'll just try to speak better. Thank you. She's about 6 feet tall and a formidable lesbian, and this scene takes place the morning after a party, quite a big party. It was possible that Pia woke herself up with her own snore, but it was also possible that it might have been someone else's. She opened her heavy eyelids and found that, as she suspected, she was face down in a pillow, her cheek and nose smashed into the fabric. She squashed her cheek to the side and squinted in the bright light, which in turn made her wince with the pain of an evil headache. "Ooh," she murmured. Even that slight movement made her nauseous. She gnashed her mouth open and shut and tried to revive a dry and shriveled tongue. She had the feeling that she might have been sick somewhere, but wasn't sure where. At least it wasn't in the rich white cotton sheets that she lay in. Wherever they were, she had the flick of a newspaper beside her, and with a heavy sense of dread and a well-founded fear of vomiting, she twisted round her head. "Hello, darling," Ed said, all lightness and cheer. She was sat up in bed with a broadsheet, and guided Pia over her glasses with a wry smile. Pia's eyes wandered lower, and she noticed that underneath the fold of the silk dressing gown, Ed was quite naked. The side of a freckled breast lay exposed. With a rising sense of panic, Pia delved beneath the sheets. There, she found her own naked breast, tummy and smooth behind. When Ed raised her eyebrows, Pia realised she was staring in horror. "We didn't." "Oh, we tried, but I'm afraid you weren't up to much," Ed replied with a nonchalant flick of the page. Despite her thunderous hangover, Pia still managed to be piqued by the dismissal. "We need to go shopping," Ed looked stern. "You seriously need a map to the G-spot." Pia blushed and found herself absent-mindedly testing the tackleness of her fingers. Well, not everybody's that fond of being touched there," Ed shrugged. "And I might not have wanted to have gone." Pia felt uneasy and queasy, delving if he didn't seem keen. "Oh, I agree, darling. Everyone has different tastes and fetishes for every area. Dip your finger in some lube and then between one person's buttocks and they're in heaven, another hell. Some just like a little bit of warning." Claire's chin dropped and she involuntarily clenched her bottom. Ed reached out and held her hand. Darling, yes, you must learn when I'm pulling your leg. Although I'd rather you didn't, because it's far too much fun. You fell asleep and you were useless as a dildo made of jelly. Claire let her face fall back into the pillow with relief. And as if I'd want to sleep with your skinny derriere. Claire lifted up her head. Well, I like it then. You insisted, and I wasn't going to object. Ed returned to her paper. Nice cheeks, by the way.
So we've got Claire's character Pia waking up with somebody she didn't think she was going to wake up with. We've got Cindy's character hearing those awful women who you find in the toilets gossiping. Do you tend to write situations that have happened to you?
Actually, it's a safe one to say that. I did wake up with one morning with my face pressed against the wall, which just felt quite cold after quite a long night. Fortunately, I rolled over and it was my now wife who was on the other side of the bed, so I can tell you that was her yes.
Cindy, do you pull things? I know obviously all authors do, but are there actually specific scenes that happen in your life that you think, I'm putting that in my next book?
No. Not in this book. No, I was never trapped in the bathroom listening to other people talk about my girlfriend. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's leave it at that. Yeah, I think, well, like you say, I think that you do take bits of your life and then massage them somewhat. And I think you draw on things that you hear about other people as well. There are scenes in London Calling that did happen to me, but I'm not going to tell you which ones.
Okay, Claire, you are going to read again, aren't you, from London Calling? London Calling is a fantastic book, if I haven't said it already, just while Claire's getting ready.
Thanks. It's a fantastic book. Where were we? We were with Jess and Lucy. They just met for the second time. They'd just been out on their first date. It was pretty successful. So that was on the Friday night. We're now on Sunday, and Jess is going round to her parents' house for Sunday lunch, and she's going round with her housemate and sister-in-law Kate, who was also a lesbian. We sat down to dinner half an hour later. Mum was in inquisitive mood, and the conversation soon turned to Kate and Caroline, much to my surprise. Clearly, other lesbians' love lives were fair game, but mine was a different story. So, Kate, I hear you're courting, Mum said. Vicky and I both choked on our green beans. Meanwhile, my nephew Freddie was sat alongside me, kicking me rhythmically in the knee, which wasn't all that comfortable. When I tried to stop him under the table, he just kicked my hand instead. I am, yes, Caroline, Kate said. Wonderful. And what does she do, Mum said. It felt like I was in some sort of surreal sketch show, and the canned laughter never came. Rather, the whole family was straining their eyes and ears, wondering where this was going. She's a nurse. She works on geriatrics. A nurse, Mum said. How lovely to be dating a nurse. She was smiling a smile I didn't recognise. Good bedside manner, Kate, Jack said. Jack, Mum said. The rest of us sniggered as Mum gave him a disapproving stare. Well, you must bring her next time. Plenty of lamb left over, Dad said, indicating the not yet eaten meat. This was all getting far too weird for me. She tends to work a lot of weekends, but if she's free, I will, Kate said. There was a pause while we all looked around the table, rummaging in our brains for the next subject matter. I'm not quite sure why, but against all my better instincts, I took the lead. I've started seeing someone too, so perhaps I'll bring her along next time. Where it had come from, I had no idea, but there it was, out in the middle of the table, right alongside the roast potatoes, the sliced lamb, and the mint sauce. It didn't have its own dish right now. but it was centre stage with flashing lights. I told my family I was seeing someone, and I didn't really even know if I was. Oh my God. Really, Mum said. She was blinking at a rapid rate, chewing her food round and round, with no sign of digestion imminent. Well, that's marvellous, Dad said. His voice was now so uncomfortably high, he reminded me of Ange. I took a large swig of my wine and forged ahead on the white water rapids I'd suddenly launched myself onto, water splattering in my face at an alarming rate. She's called Lucy. She's an optician. I paused, my mum's face, and sure enough, there was an uplift. I slalommed on. She's really nice. You like her. All of a sudden, my bravado disappeared and my canoe capsized. I took another swig of my wine and focused my attention on Freddie. And you, young man, can stop kicking me. Amazingly, he did as he was told. So, how long have you been seeing her exactly, Mum said. I could see the cogs whirring in her brain. We had our first date on Friday, I said. Friday. Early days then. Her tone implied it was a little early to be making grand statements when I'd had one solitary date. Yeah, but I'm optimistic, I said. If the word awkward hadn't already been invented, I would have carved it on the table there and then and presented it to my mother as a gift. Well, of course, she's welcome any time, Mum said. Any of your friends are. And there it was. Kate was courting, I had a friend. She's my girlfriend, Mum, I said. I didn't want to give this up, even though I knew it was a fight I'd already conceded. Plus, was she my girlfriend after one date? Even I wasn't sure. You know what I mean, Mum said. Her tone and body language told me this subject experiment had just come to a close. Now, who's for more potatoes?
Thank you, Claire. We're going to, about 11:15, there'll be a chance if you want to buy some books over there, and we'll do any signings or anything if you want to, and have some pictures. So we've got about 10 minutes left. I have got some more questions I can grill them with. But has anyone out there got any questions? Angie Peach, oh no, here we go. Direct it to anybody on the panel.
Okay, for everyone, Jade Winters recently did a blog saying about how lesbian authors make it hard for lesbian couples because we make relationships in books seem so perfect, or like characters can do certain things that are so outrageous that in real life couples are like, oh, you've never done that for me. Do you do that with your partners, or do they say that to you? Do your partners read your books and go, why haven't you ever done that with me? Anyone?
I think she'd be quite happy if I didn't do most things.
My first two romances were quite dark and angst-ridden, but I think my wife's fairly thankful that our life is different.
But it does have happy ever after, doesn't it?
Just about.
All of our books, actually. I think all of the books in lesbian fiction always have happy ever afters. Can anyone name a book in lesbian fiction that doesn't have a happy ever after? Would you want to read a book that didn't have a happy ever after? No, that's why we do it, Cindy.
I actually do it to her, because she doesn't read fiction except for my books, so I'll say, but in all the romances, this is what they do. So it makes her nuts.
Okay, good question, Angie. Anybody else?
So you're all lesbian independent authors, is it quite competitive between you?
Is it competitive between us lot?
No.
I don't think so at all, because people don't just read one book. People read lots of books and lots of authors, and so actually if you work together and you support each other, you can recommend, you know, if I say actually no, do not read Clare Lydon, that's not going to get me more readers.
It's awful when you say it as well.
And people say that, you know, after reading one of my books, they fancied a bit more British lesbian, so I think it just does us more good.
Yeah, I mean, I would say from, you know, I published my book in March, and these guys are nothing but supportive and really help me out a lot more way, which I'm very appreciative of. So it's completely opposite.
I think it's difficult when you're an independent author. I made so many mistakes at the start. If you try and do it on your own, you make so many mistakes. So now, if you see an up-and-coming new author who wants to go independent, you've got to help them, because you think, crikey, there's things that I wish somebody would have told me.
Yeah, well, mainly
2 years ago.
Companies that charge a lot of money for publishing, doing what you can do for yourself very easily. That's what that usually.
I think generally, both in the US and the UK, the lesbian fiction authors are mostly pretty generous toward one another and supportive. I was just at the lesbian fiction conference in Portland, Oregon, and everybody was just really sweet to one another. I don't know what they say in private, but in public it was all good. And as an indie, the amount of support and help I got from Kiki and Clare Ashton and Claire's wife Jane was just enormous. I mean, I couldn't have done this without them, and really just guiding me through all of my angst and craziness, and getting me to the finish line. So I just want to thank them publicly, which I have done repeatedly, but I'll do again. Because yeah, it was just really great. And I just wanted to just have a prerogative to point out that there are a couple of other lesbian fiction authors here. H.G. Monroe, who is also an indie, is there in the white shirt.
She won, was it another Goldie last week? She won 2 Goldies.
That's right,
now.
she won 2 Goldies, and she has a new book out called Stars Collide that I read and really liked. So look at her backlist as well. And Amy Dunn, who writes with Bold Strokes and just also won a Goldie. And Corinne Claxton is behind her, another Bold Strokes author. Is Andrea here? Andrea Bramhall.
Karen Carpenter.
Who won a Land Literary Award for Best Romance. Amazing.
We brought all our friends in the audience.
And Angela Jane Peach, who wrote an amazing book that was also very well-read, #1. I read it, loved it, all of that. So, you've got some really big talent in this room.
Yeah, so I think, like Sue said, it is supportive, but like the scene she just read, you wonder what they say in the bathroom. Anybody else? Got any? Yeah.
How have you found the market and your audience in terms of the e-reads availability? I bought my first Kindle this year, and I read far more than I used to, just purely because the availability is better. So how have you found your audiences have either changed for the better?
I think it's growing. So because we're all independent, local bookshops. I know Claire's done this with some bookshops in London. Local bookshops, we can go into as authors and we can offer our books like we've done over there. And you might see them on the shelves in small local bookshops. You won't walk into Tesco and see our lesbian fiction books everywhere. But paperback sales compared to ebook sales are actually tiny. So I don't think actually from independent authors, you can walk into WH Smith's or Waterstones and order any of our books and they'll have them in a couple of days. Or you can go onto Amazon, the paperbacks I'm talking about, go to Amazon and you can get a paperback on next day delivery. And I think now with the internet, so many people do internet shopping anyway, that it makes no difference. So instead of popping down to this local town that's dead anyway and the Waterstones is closed down, I'll order my paperbacks online. So people who do love paperbacks are still buying paperbacks and they are able to buy our paperbacks. But it's shrinking, in my opinion, that the paperback market and the ebook market is just exploding.
I think for this genre where people read several books a week, I think they really like the cheaper ebooks in this genre. So I think they've all done very well out of Amazon Kindle and Smashwords for other.
I think price is a big issue as well, like I said. I mean, they're a lot cheaper on Kindle than they are in paperback, so people tend to go for that. Yeah, like Kiki said, I've got mine on sale in a couple of bookshops in London, but they do sell, but the majority, 99% of the sales come from ebook.
And I think with ebooks as well, people now our market is exploding because no one can see what you're reading on a Kindle, no one can see what you're clicking and buying, and we tend to have quite a few men on our general Facebook walls. There seems to be a lot of men, a lot of married, straight women, and obviously the lesbian crowd who would usually have bought the books anyway.
They're very good. People are very respectful and not crude about it, just like reading books.
No, it's all really really positive. Obviously, it's not brilliant for the publishers and the big shops, but that's unfortunately the way it's happening. Benny, did you have a question? Because I see your hand go up.
Yeah. Basically for you, I mean, you're quite prolific with your
5 books in 2 years. I mean, how disciplined do you have to be able to get...
Do you know what, Benny? I do work hard. I've got two young children, but I've always, no matter what I'm going to do, you have to work hard. So my wife actually worked away in London when I started writing. She was away for most of the week, and my children just started going to sleep at night. And I just thought I would just have a go. So I would work, I'd get into bed and I'd work from 7 o'clock till sort of midnight at night. And then when they were at home with me, because I was a stay-at-home mum, I didn't do anything in the day, so it was lots of evenings. And then in September, 2 years ago, my little girl started going to nursery, so I had the mornings as well, so I had mornings and evenings. And now they're both in school, so I've got all day and all evenings, so there's going to be loads more, Benny. But yes, you have to, we have to.
And you find it inconvenient?
I think it depends on the type of person. I think some I won't name names, I know somebody who says they're only going to write a book if they have 6 months in a cabin in Scotland. It's like, well, that's not the real world. You've got a life, you've got kids, you have to... I view it as work. I've got to work, and I do the school run, and I try and avoid the mums who ask to go for coffee, and I say no, and I come home, and I sit and I work from 9 till 2:30 now. And then I'll sometimes work in the evenings, because for me it's my job now. I gave up my job as a teacher, I'm now a writer, so I have to work.
Question to Claire's. Cindy's mentioned coming out in October. What are you two working on at the moment? Are they more sort of rom-coms?
I'm working on my second book at the moment. I've just pulled it all apart and put it back together again, so it should be out Q4, I reckon. And so, yeah, it's being edited at the moment. It's written, it just needs to be edited and put together. So
And it's a totally separate?
It's a totally separate book, yeah. I'm not sure about the title yet, so I can't tell you it. No, not based in London, no. I'll probably go back to London for my third book, but this one's about a reunion of sorts, and it's based in Devon, so it's still UK, but based in Devon.
I've got 2 young kids, I keep my mind aren't at nursery yet, so doing the last book almost killed me trying to get it out, so I'm having a bloody good rest at the moment. I've got some ideas coming up.
I think with the timing, I think especially with independent authors, people feel that independent authors just bang out book after book after book. I think the difference is we haven't got a publisher who is sort of giving us release dates of 2017, giving us, you know, long release dates. It doesn't have to go through. Obviously, we still have editors, we still have book designers, blurb editors and things, but when we've finished and it's checked, we can release it when we want, so it does tend to happen slightly more quickly. Some good questions, Benny. Anybody else got any questions? Okay, I'd like to ask just one last thing. We've all read scenes, including our main characters, which obviously we're going to do to promote our books. All of our books have got secondary characters in them. How important is the chemistry between secondary characters? Clare, Ashton, do you want to start with that one?
And I, especially in this one, I've very distinctive, entertaining secondary characters. They have very different purposes for the books, but a lot of the humour, actually a lot of the humour comes in the secondary characters. This one I really wanted the romance to work as a proper full-blown romance where there's highs and lows and to really feel full force of it. Sometimes I find that humour can detract from the real big heart moments. So I put a lot of the humour in the secondary characters actually, and that to give a bit of a rest from all that rise and fall of the romance.
Cindy, so your next book focuses on Angie.
Yeah.
Are you going to have subsequent books focusing on the other smaller characters that were in Exception to the Rule?
The third book will be a historical romance, and it will. There's a minor character in the first book, although she plays a pretty big role. Her name's Millicent Farrell, and she's an older woman who has a very brief affair with Tracy when she's 18. And so the third book is going to be how did Millicent get the way she is, and it'll go back to the 1960s during the Civil Rights era in the U.S. South, and really look at that aspect of history and what Millicent and her 2 friends, who are Tracy's parents, Luann and Billy, went through during that time as white, progressive people in the South as teenagers. So a little more serious.
Yeah, secondary characters are hugely important, and I really enjoy writing them. And in London Calling, I had a lot of fan mail for some more. People wanted to know a lot more about Kate. They wanted to know her story. So that might be my third book, I'm thinking at the moment. Like not a follow-on, but a sequel, but a follow-on look at her life and bring the characters maybe back in a little bit. Surprisingly, a few people liked Karen as well, who's the bad girl. She's the bad girl with the, she's a bitch. And I had a couple of emails saying, we want to know more about Karen, we like bad girls. I'm like, really? And people like the mum as well. But yeah, secondary characters are hugely important, and they're really fun to write too.
So you said you have fan mail about your characters. Do you find people do talk to you about your character, about your characters and wondering what they're up to?
Yeah.
But they are real. They are real, aren't they? They are real.
Yeah.
Can we have a big round of applause for these? You can have a buy, you can come and talk to people, get some photos done, and there's another wonderful panel after this with the Bold Strokes girls. So yeah, please have a wonderful Owlfest. I hope you're all going to be at the bar later with your 60s stuff on, because we'll all be there, regardless of the weather. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming.
And thank you, Kiki.
Thank you.